The pros know the name Penley shafts, and soon you will too, as this design and manufacturing outfit looks to disrupt the golf equipment business. This is Made in America. An elite golfer spends nearly as much time selecting their equipment as they do perfecting their skills. That's because these athletes place so much trust in their gear that something as critical as a club is much like an extension of their own arm. At the heart of every golf club is the shaft, the backbone of each swing, connecting the grip and the head with a complex formula of material responsible for dictating both distance and strength. Carter Penley is so passionate about golf shafts that he came out of retirement in his 70s to get back to what he loves most, designing and manufacturing carbon fiber shafts with an attention to detail only a golf lover could have. Only Carter doesn't play.
The guy who taught me told me never play golf because it was just a bias or design from an engineer. He never played golf in his life, but made some of the best shafts in the world.
So it wasn't golf that brought Carter to the carbon fiber shafts business 35 years ago, but his engineering skills. He understood the material based on his experience working for a major aerospace company, and he was recruited because of it.
Yeah, I knew the mechanics of carbon fiber, which a lot of people didn't, so a lot of the shafts weren't working very well. And so we ended up getting to a long drive contest where there were a lot of power, so shafts did a lot of braking, and I solved that problem for them. It was just a matter of knowing the mechanical properties to have to be fixed and how to do it.
Years later, Carter retired from the business he oversaw, took a few years off, and then decided to buy some of his old equipment and get back into business. And to focus on design and low-volume production means that Penley's business lives or dies based on its competitive advantage, and premium products and efficient operations are key.
Well, the competitive advantage is being able to design a better product. And then the second is to manufacture that product. Every time there's a chance to improve something, I do it. And quite frankly, with my background in aerospace, we have to be, as engineers, we had to be somewhat efficient, which means you've got to cheapen it once in a while. So we would do that. We would look at ways of building something so that it would take less time. For instance, putting patterns together in a group instead of one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. If you can do that and make it work, if I can prove that works, or I can develop a prototype that shows it has the same strength, then we do that. So I've learned over the years, even though I do a very long process here, no one wants to do, I don't make thousands, I couldn't, but I can make them fairly quickly.
When you bring such attention to detail to the sport, the big names in golf take note. And so Carter and his current and former companies have supported some icons over the years. The shafts might be a little more expensive, but those who know a good shaft know that they get what they pay for.
Most of the guys we deal with are the better players. Joe Durant, who was one of the top PGA players. Phil Mickelson played some of my products. John Daly was on our staff. And then on the long drive guys, we had a whole bunch of long drive drivers that were total champions. Some are 4 or 5 time champions. And we built some of the best shafts. And we hold several records in that world, which kind of pushed me along. I think at one event we had all 10 finalists from the world were all finished in the top 1 through 10 with my shaft. It's the first time that happened. I think we still hold the world's longest measured record in competition, where they actually measured accurately, and that was 539 yards. That was about 2005, and that still stands today as far as I know. So that's kind of what I do. So most of the guys I deal with, Anna, are good players because they're the ones who understand what they're buying. A bad player, he just really doesn't know either way, and no matter what you fit him with, sometimes they call and say, hey, I got a 40 handicap and I want to go to graphite and be a better player. And I say, you know what, don't spend the money on graphite, go buy some lessons.
One player, Lenny Watkins, told Carter years ago that if golfers had one thing in common, it was that they wanted a shaft that was very stable. Insight that inspired Carter to develop the mathematical formula that supports Penley's proprietary T-bar technology, or tip-to-butt aspect ratio. This method is incorporated in each shaft, and the company manufactures them with specific parameters as to how the shaft flexes and recovers. In fact, T-bar allows Penley to manufacture to a specific outcome rather than a general outcome and create a shaft that's exactly the same every time, a boon for a product line already known for its tight tolerances and consistency.
I had to prove the facts that I was, seeing why 2 shafts didn't play the same, although were made by the same guy. So that's essentially what I started out with, and those are the kind of people I met with, and had a lot of good players who I got to stand with and talk to.
In support of their quality-first mentality, Penley shafts are about as made in America as you can get. And that's because the Penley family puts their blood, sweat, and tears into each and every shaft that gets produced. Offshoring production isn't even a thought for Carter, who hand grinds every single shaft that comes off the line in order to control the quality.
I started just doing that myself because I know I have to be right, because I'm the guy that has to answer to them. I produce about 100 a day. Every shaft I make, as we call handmade, is handmade. For instance, when we grind the shafts to the flexes that they have to be in at, I grind them to a tighter flex, 20% tighter than anybody else, sometimes 30 and 40 depending on who the player is. And then I go ahead and just make a handful of those guys. For long driver guys, I only make 15 shafts at a time, and they're numbered by lot. So I have to do a lot of custom work. People want different lengths, different cuts, but I have to know where to cut and what to do for them, because these guys that are pretty good players get to figure it out pretty soon, and they tell me what they need. But all I do is custom stuff. And one of the things you better do well if you're a small company, particularly very small, first of all, you gotta have good quality. I make the best shafts, I use the best materials, I put more time into them. I'm here 6 days a week, 7 days a week, and sometimes I'm the only one doing all the work because I have to do very special grinding. In most factories, they'll put it through a grinder or sander for 8 seconds and it's ready to paint and sell. It takes me 15 minutes to make that shaft work because I gotta tune it right down, and that's that algorithm I developed with patenting.
As Carter alludes to, the process for making a Penley shaft is much more manual than you'd expect. And that's because handmade is a real thing here. It starts with hand-cutting carbon fiber sheets before heating it and applying it to the mandrel on a rolling table. A wrapping machine applies HTP film, and an oven cures the film so it's tight and secure. The mandrel is removed after it emerges from the hot oven, and that's when Carter sands the shaft manually before measuring and cutting the tips. Next, the paint is applied by hand and in 2 coats. After curing, the Penley graphic is adhered with a heat transfer machine, at which point all that stands between the shaft and its eager recipient is a clear coat. And this hands-on approach and attention to detail is what's kept customers coming back, even though Penley's isn't the lowest cost product out there.
You don't call a salesman, you don't get a salesman, you don't get a secretary, you don't get a front office, you get the factory. You get and I can sit right there and I can walk from my desk to the table and I can start designing another shaft right there on the spot if I have to. So they have that kind of confidence. You got quality, you got service, and you got price. After that, it's continuing the service. Every single guy I've done work for, I've got a folder on. Back 30 years, the first guy I ever did work for is still in there. I can go back 20 years and tell you what we made for him. People call us and say, I had this shaft, a Still 70 you did about 1998, 99. I said, yeah. I have all the drawings. I got 300 and some designs I've drawn all myself, designed them all myself. So I have everything there when they call up.
But just because he doesn't sell a bargain basement product doesn't mean he doesn't work hard to reduce costs and compress manufacturing times, a skill he picked up during his time working in aerospace, and one he now uses to keep more money in the pockets of his customers. That's not to say there aren't challenges in doing things the right way, especially being situated in Southern California.
Offshore is a big battle for me because I'm only 20 miles from offshore. That's Mexico. One of the problems that happens there, of course, right off the bat is we're paying $15, $20 an hour. They're paying $5. We may pay $3,000 or $4,000 for a building, and they're paying $1. So those kind of costs are an advantage for them. The one thing that happens though is they end up imitating a lot of times what they make. I look at it, the quality wouldn't be what I would put out, and sometimes it's hard to fight that because what goes along with that, sometimes poor quality, is a cheap price. I still build new products every year. I change them. I don't necessarily come out with a new shaft every year because every time overseas they build a new shaft, say they want to make one stiffer or softer or something, so well, it'll play better if they do this. So they make another, instead of making an upgrade to their existing shaft, they paint it a different color and call it something different. And that makes everybody think it's brand new and they all want to buy it. So that again eats into the small guys because we don't want to build shafts that have different colors and different decorations because that's all it is. So you have to battle that every day.
Still, Carter finds keeping his supply chain local helps support his rigid quality standards, even if it means paying a little bit more for materials.
About everything I get involved with is made in USA. When I buy parts for my cars, I try to buy a good part. I don't buy the cheapest, sometimes don't buy the most expensive, but I'm never going to buy the cheapest thing. But I know there's a lot of good companies out there making stuff and they're getting beat up. So I don't mind spending a few dollars more because I think that's very important for our economy and for our, just being loyal to the guy next door to you who does work. What we've done is we go ahead and try to make sure that we buy all American products. As a matter of fact, everything on that shaft is made in the United States, except one item, and that's the decoration we put on, and that's made in Taiwan because nobody makes them here anymore. I used to buy them right here, and I didn't mind paying more money. But after everybody's gone, you know, Anna, the guys offshore just push the price up because they know they put you out of business.
And while many external factors impact who stays in this industry and who goes, companies like Penley still have some control over their own destiny. For Carter, it's disruptive ideas like the one he's developing that could change the way golf clubs are sold entirely by making the components of the club plug and play. In this case, the shafts reach resellers with an OEM tip already installed, which makes it easy for golfers to test a new shaft and replace it with an adapter, essentially creating an off-the-shelf product, cutting hassle and lead time for new shafts significantly.
Now, I've been developing this. I'm the only person that does it, and I don't know if it'll ever be, you know, if I live long enough to see it really go in, but I think in years to come, that's the way all shafts are going to have to be done. They're all going to be ready to play. We're going to take the golf shaft, which is a component. You know, the head's a component, shaft's a component, and the grip's a component. The club is a product, right? The whole club. But now that we have the adapters, and I can give them a better graphite shaft and a grip on it and give them the right length, it's now a product. I'm actually making a product that is competitive with a whole golf club. Because most people who have golf clubs pay $500 or $600 for them. They like that head, but the shafts don't work real well sometimes, or they need a different shaft because of their body's changed. So they can call me and I can get them the shaft. I tell them, you know, even though the shafts are expensive, not real expensive, not the most, but they're about half the price of buying a new club. So you take that head, put it on my shaft, and you get it, you know, and it works well for you. You've got a higher quality product now and half the price. The old days, you have to build a whole club, it's called a demo. So the guy hits it and doesn't like it, and if he likes it, they say, okay, I like this one. Okay, we'll take the dimensions off that and we'll send it into the factory and they're gonna build you a club. Well, when you get to it, it's not the same, right? I learned that, right? So when they take my shaft, which is now a product, we call it a ready-to-play product, they put it in and they hit it and they go, wow, I like this. How soon can I get one made? It's in your hand. Walk away with it.
This is IEN Made in America.